What you're about to hear is Judge Frank Caprio's most emotional case ever recorded. This story is so powerful that it stays with you long after it ends. An 84-year-old homeless veteran walks into court after being accused of stealing a loaf of bread. But when Judge Caprio discovers what this man has been keeping inside his old shopping cart for nearly 20 years, he stops the entire courtroom. What happens next becomes one of the most unforgettable moments ever captured on video. This clip has been viewed more than 50 million times because the truth behind this veteran's secret is almost impossible to believe. When he finally reveals it, Judge Caprio responds in a way no one saw coming. His decision becomes so unprecedented that it changes courtroom history and spreads across news stations worldwide. But before we reach the moment that shook the internet, only a tiny percentage of viewers are actually subscribed. And a story like this, a story that restores faith in humanity, deserves to reach everyone. So subscribe right now so more people can witness what happens in this courtroom. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from, New York, London, Tokyo, Brazil, because I want to see how far this message of compassion travels. What this homeless veteran has been carrying in his cart for 2 decades will leave you speechless. What Judge Caprio does when he sees it will send chills down your spine. And what happens after this video goes viral will completely shock you. It's a cold November morning in Providence Municipal Court. Judge Frank Caprio takes his seat, unaware that he is minutes away from a moment that will break his heart and lift his spirit all at once. The courtroom is packed. Families, defendants, visitors who traveled from different states just to see his compassion in action. Everyone senses something unusual in the air, as if something big is about to happen. At 10:15 a.m., the bailiff calls the last case of the morning. On paper, it looks like an ordinary shoplifting charge. But nothing about this moment is ordinary, because walking through those courtroom doors is an 84-year-old man named Robert Bobby Martinez. The first thing you notice isn't Bobby himself. It's the object trailing behind him, an old, battered shopping cart covered by a green tarp. The wheels squeak with every slow step, and everything inside looks like it might be all he owns in the world. But before I explain what Judge Caprio discovers inside that cart, something so powerful it brought grown men to tears, I need you to do one thing. Leave a comment telling me where you are watching from. Texas, Germany, Australia, the Philippines. This story deserves to reach people everywhere, and Judge Caprio's legacy of compassion needs to spread across the entire world. Bobby moves forward carefully, leaning on a walking stick that looks like it could have been carved from driftwood. He's dressed in layers, a faded army jacket over old sweaters, pants patched over and over again, and boots held together with strips of duct tape. It's clear this man has survived harsh conditions for a long time. But something else grabs Judge Caprio's attention right away. Despite his obvious poverty, Bobby stands with dignity. He removes his worn baseball cap, straightens his back as much as his age allows, and looks Judge Caprio directly in the eyes. "Robert Anthony Martinez," the clerk calls out while reading from the file. Bobby steps forward, one hand gripping his walking stick and the other resting protectively on his cart, as if guarding something precious hidden beneath the tarp. Judge Caprio lifts his eyes from the papers in front of him, the same compassionate eyes that have shown mercy to thousands over 3 decades. And immediately he senses that this is not a typical shoplifting case. "Mr. Martinez," he begins, "you're charged with shoplifting a loaf of bread valued at $2.89 from Tony's Market. How do you plead?" "Guilty, Your Honor," Bobby replies, his voice heavy with years of hardship. "I took the bread. I was hungry and I had no money." Judge Caprio sets down his pen, a small gesture that always signals he's about to shift from legal formality to human understanding. "Mr. Martinez," he asks gently, "can you tell me about your circumstances? Why weren't you able to pay for the bread?" Bobby glances around at the crowded courtroom, then returns his eyes to the judge. "Your Honor, I've been homeless for 6 years. I live on the streets. I try to find work when I can," Bobby continues, "but at my age, it's not easy." Judge Caprio's expression softens. "Mr. Martinez, may I ask how old you are?" Bobby answers, 84, Your Honor. Same age as you, I believe." That stops Judge Caprio in his tracks. Two men, both 84 years old, born in the same year, yet living completely different lives. One sits on the bench as a respected judge, honored and admired. The other stands before him, homeless, hungry, and accused of stealing bread just to survive. "We are the same age indeed, Mr. Martinez," Caprio says gently. "Tell me, did you serve our country?" Bobby's entire posture changes. Despite his frailty, he stands straighter, almost instinctively. "Yes, Your Honor. United States Marine Corps, Vietnam, 1968 to 1970. 3 tours." If the story already feels heavy, an 84-year-old homeless Marine veteran, the same age as the judge, stealing food because he has nothing, this is where it becomes almost overwhelming. Judge Caprio rises from his bench, a gesture he only makes when he wants to remove the formal distance between himself and the person standing before him. It's his way of saying, "Right now, I am not just a judge, I am a human being." "Mr. Martinez." "Bobby," he begins, "you served 3 tours in Vietnam?" "Yes, Your Honor. I was 20 when I shipped out to Da Nang. I thought I'd do 1 tour and come home, but they kept extending this. Before I knew it, I'd been there for 3 years." Throughout the conversation, Judge Caprio can't help noticing that Bobby's hand never leaves the handle of his shopping cart, not even for a second. His grip is firm, almost protective, as if something inside that cart is more valuable than anything he owns. "Bobby," Caprio finally asks, "I hope you don't mind me asking, what's in the cart?" The question changes Bobby instantly. His grip tightens, his shoulders tense, and for the first time since he entered the courtroom, he looks genuinely afraid. "Your Honor, it's just personal things, nothing illegal, nothing stolen, just things that matter to me." Judge Caprio, guided by decades of reading people's emotions, feels something deeper here, something unusual. "Bobby," he says softly, "would you feel comfortable showing me what's in the cart? I'm not asking as a judge right now. I'm asking as another human being," Judge Caprio continues, "someone who genuinely cares about your story." Bobby slowly looks around the courtroom at the more than 50 people watching him. His hands shake slightly as he thinks about the request, and you can see the conflict written all over his face. "Your Honor," he finally says, "people might think I've lost my mind when they see what's in here. They might think the war damaged something in me." "Bobby," Judge Caprio replies gently, "I've been on this bench for 30 years. I've seen just about everything a human being can carry, and I have never, not once, thought someone was broken because they cared too deeply about something. Please, show us what matters to you." Bobby breathes in deeply, the kind of breath that comes from somewhere buried in the soul. Then, slowly and carefully, he lifts the green tarp covering his cart. What the courtroom sees next freezes every person in place. The shopping cart is packed full. Hundreds of photographs, letters, military documents, dog tags, Purple Heart medals, Bronze Star ribbons, and a thick, well-protected military journal wrapped in plastic. But that's not what shocks everyone. That's not what turns this into a 50 million view viral moment. As Bobby lifts a few of the photographs, Judge Caprio's eyes widen with disbelief. "Bobby, are these?" "Yes, Your Honor," Bobby whispers, his voice beginning to tremble. "These are every Marine from my 3 units who didn't make it home from Vietnam. I've been carrying their pictures, their letters, their stories for over 50 years. The entire courtroom falls silent. Bobby begins to lift the photos one by one. Young faces stare back, boys barely out of high school, captured in grainy images with forced smiles, brave eyes, and the look of Marines about to head into battle. "This," Bobby says, lifting a black and white photo, "is Lance Corporal Danny Reeves from Oklahoma. He was 19. He died during the Tet Offensive. He used to show me pictures of his girlfriend, Sarah. They were saving up to buy a little farm when he got home." Judge Caprio steps closer to look, and Bobby continues revealing more photographs and documents, each one representing a life that ended too soon. "This is Corporal Miguel Santos from New Mexico," Bobby says softly. "He wanted to become a teacher when the war was over. He died saving 4 wounded Marines during a mortar attack. His last words were, Tell my mama I love her and I'm proud to be her son. And this one, Bobby says softly, lifting another worn photograph, is Private First Class Kevin O'Brien from Boston, 18 years old. He pauses, steadying himself. He threw himself on a grenade to save our entire squad. Before he died, he handed me this letter for his parents and said, "Make sure they know I wasn't scared. Make sure they know I died thinking about Sunday dinners at home." As Bobby continues showing picture after picture and sharing story after story, the courtroom begins to crumble emotionally. People wipe their eyes, some openly crying. These aren't random old military keepsakes. They're a traveling memorial, lovingly preserved by a man who sacrificed his own stability, comfort, and safety just to make sure his fallen brothers were never forgotten. "Your Honor," Bobby says, voice trembling, "I know people look at me and see a crazy old homeless veteran with a cart full of junk. But these boys, they deserve to be remembered. Their families deserve to know that someone still carries their memory, that someone still honors their sacrifice." Judge Caprio's eyes fill with tears as the enormity of Bobby's dedication becomes clear. "Bobby," he asked quietly, "how many Marine stories are you carrying?" 382, Your Honor," Bobby replies. "Every name, every face, every story I can remember or piece together. I've got their last letters home, their medals that never made it to their families, their personal items that got lost in the chaos of war. I've been their guardian for half a century, but Bobby isn't done." He reaches into the deepest part of the cart and slowly lifts out a thick, aged notebook. Its edges are worn, its pages softened by time, and it's wrapped carefully in layers of plastic to protect it from rain and weather. "This is their book, Your Honor," he explains. "Every story I could find, every detail about their lives, their dreams, how they died, and who they left behind. I've been writing in it for 53 years, adding to it whenever I learn something new about one of my boys." Judge Caprio takes the notebook carefully, almost reverently, as though he's holding something sacred. He begins reading, and his expression shifts, from amazement to deep admiration to something close to disbelief. "Bobby," he finally says, "this is extraordinary. It's the most complete memorial to forgotten heroes I've ever seen. You've created something remarkable, something sacred." But then Judge Caprio's eyes land on a page that makes him stop cold. And this becomes the moment that sends the video viral across the world. "Bobby," he says slowly, "it says here you've been tracking down the families of fallen Marines and returning their personal effects. Shh. How many families have you found over the years?" Judge Caprio asked quietly. 216, Your Honor," Bobby replies. "Sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades, but I find them. I travel however I can, hitchhiking, walking, catching buses. And when I do find a family, if I have the money to get there, I give them their son's last letter, or his medal, or a picture he carried of home. I tell them how brave he was, how much we loved him, how he died with honor." Judge Caprio begins to understand the truth. Standing before him is a man who has spent more than half a century serving others, honoring the dead, comforting their families, carrying their stories, while living in poverty and homelessness himself. "Bobby," he asked gently, "you've been homeless for 6 years?" "Yes, sir," Bobby answers. "Lost my apartment when my VA disability payments got messed up. Some computer error, they said. After that, I had nowhere to go. Been on the streets ever since. But I keep the cart with me, always. These boys, they need someone to watch over them, someone to make sure they aren't forgotten." At this point, the courtroom is silent. You can hear people breathing, some wiping their eyes, because what they are witnessing is one of the purest acts of devotion and loyalty imaginable. And then comes the moment that becomes the most shared, most replayed courtroom clip in history. Judge Caprio slowly removes his judicial robe, folds it neatly, and steps down from the bench. He walks toward Bobby without hesitation, and then in front of an entire courtroom, he kneels beside the shopping cart. He doesn't rush. He doesn't treat it like evidence. He treats it like sacred ground. He gently lifts each photograph, reads through each letter, touches each medal with care. It is as if he is standing in front of a national war memorial, one built from scraps, memories, and the love of a single man. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Caprio finally says, his voice trembling yet strong, you are witnessing something extraordinary. This man has devoted his entire adult life to honoring fallen heroes forgotten by the world, except by him. He stands again, not just addressing Bobby, but as if speaking to every person who will one day watch this moment. Not only am I dismissing this shoplifting charge, he announces, but I'm doing something I have never done in 30 years on this bench. He turns to Bobby. Robert Martinez, I am appointing you as an honorary guardian of military remembrance for this court and for this community. Your service to the memory of our fallen Marines is the most noble and selfless act I have ever witnessed. The courtroom explodes into thunderous applause, but Judge Caprio lifts his hand for silence. He isn't done yet, and here comes the hook, because what he's about to say next changes one man's life forever and shocks everyone watching. Furthermore, effective immediately, I am personally ensuring that Bobby receives stable housing and every resource he needs to continue his sacred mission. The state of Rhode Island, through this court, will provide him with permanent residence and the full support required to honor these fallen heroes with dignity. But Judge Caprio still isn't finished, and this next moment breaks every rule of courtroom procedure, yet becomes one of the most emotional gestures ever seen in a courtroom. He pulls out his personal phone, right there in open court, and makes a call. General Patterson, this is Judge Frank Caprio in Providence. I have someone you must meet immediately, someone who has honored our fallen Marines for 53 years with no recognition, no assistance, and no gratitude except from the families he comforted. Can you be here within the hour? Within 40 minutes, representatives from the Rhode Island National Guard, the Veterans Affairs Office, the Providence Mayor's Office, and even the commanding general of the Marine Corps Reserve walk into Judge Caprio's courtroom. They meet Bobby, they listen to his story, and they learn about a mission he has carried alone for 5 decades, but none of them are prepared for Judge Caprio's final announcement, one that brings every single person in the room to tears. Bobby, I want you to understand something, and I want every person here and everyone who will watch this video to understand it as well. You are not homeless anymore. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. And neither are your 382 Marine brothers. Today, right now, we honor all of you. What followed after this case went public sparked a global movement of remembrance, gratitude, and support for veterans. Within 6 hours of the video being posted online, Bobby's story was viewed more than 5 million times. Within a single day, it had surpassed 25 million views. Major networks, and from CNN to BBC, broadcast the story worldwide. The Veterans Affairs Office immediately created the Robert Martinez Memorial Guard Fund, dedicated to supporting homeless veterans in private memorial efforts across the country. And in just the first month, people around the world donated more than $8 million, moved by Bobby's lifelong devotion to honoring fallen heroes. But the most astonishing response didn't come from the media, politicians, or officials. It came from the families of the Marines whose memories Bobby had been protecting for decades. Within days, more than 300 family members reached out, desperate to meet the man who had carried their son's stories across half a century. And here's the moment that will stop you in your tracks. Sarah Chris, now 73 years old, once the teenage girlfriend of Lance Corporal Danny Reeves from Oklahoma, flew all the way to Providence just to see Bobby face to face. Danny has been gone for 55 years, she told reporters through tears. But Bobby made sure he never disappeared from this world. He shared things about Danny's final days that I never knew. It feels like a part of my first love has been returned to me. What happened next elevated Bobby's life's work into American history itself. The Smithsonian Institution contacted Judge Caprio's court and immediately requested Bobby's notebook and his entire photograph archive for permanent exhibition in the National Museum of American History. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the Marine Corps War Memorial both invited him to participate in special remembrance ceremonies honoring fallen service members. Then came the moment that changed Bobby's everyday life forever. He was given a beautiful 3-bedroom home where he could display and care for his memorial collection with dignity. The extra rooms were transformed into shrines, one for each of the 382 Marines whose stories he carried. complete with custom display cases and lighting donated by grateful Americans. But the most emotional moment was still ahead. When Bobby's story reached President Biden, a man who knows the weight of personal loss, the president personally invited him to the White House. He declared Bobby a living national treasure, someone whose devotion to honoring others reflects the very best of American values and the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Bobby's response was simple and humble. Mr. President, I never sought recognition. I just wanted to make sure my boys were not forgotten. Every Marine deserves to be remembered. This remarkable case became the final act of Judge Frank Caprio's career, the last story he presided over before retiring. It became the perfect closing chapter to a lifetime defined by compassion and justice. At Judge Caprio's retirement ceremony, Bobby Martinez sat at the place of honor at the head table, the man who carried 382 fallen heroes with him, and the man whose story reminded the world of what true service, loyalty, and humanity really look like. Bobby arrived at Judge Caprio's retirement ceremony carrying something deeply meaningful, a new photograph for his memorial collection. It was the image of Judge Caprio kneeling before Bobby's cart, honoring the 382 Marines whose stories he had guarded for decades. As he placed the picture among the others, Bobby looked out at the crowd and said, "Judge Caprio saved my life, and he honored my boys. Now he belongs in this memorial too, because he showed the world what real justice looks like. And now I want to ask you something Judge Caprio himself would ask, something Bobby would hope every viewer thinks about. In the comments, tell us about your quiet heroes. Who in your life deserves recognition for their unseen acts of kindness? Who are the people in your community who serve others without applause, without reward, without needing anyone to notice? For 30 years, Judge Frank Caprio showed us that compassion is a decision, a choice we must make day after day. And through 53 years of devotion, Bobby Martinez proved that love, honor, and remembrance can outlast hardship, poverty, and every obstacle life throws our way. So share your hero stories below, because Judge Caprio's legacy isn't just in his courtroom decisions. It lives on in every act of kindness, every moment of humanity, every instance where we choose to see dignity in someone the world has overlooked. If this story touched your heart, if Judge Caprio's compassion and Bobby's lifetime of sacrifice moved you, please share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that true heroes walk beside us every single day. Like this video. If you believe in honoring our veterans, supporting the homeless, treating people with dignity, and remembering those who gave everything for our freedom. Subscribe for more powerful stories that prove what Judge Frank Caprio stood for. That compassion, kindness, and human decency will always rise above indifference. And remember Judge Caprio's final message to Bobby and to all of us. Justice isn't only about enforcing the law, it's about recognizing the human being in front of you and responding with your heart. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for helping keep Judge Caprio's spirit and the memory of our fallen heroes alive.